Welcome everyone to another day of Mr. Coleflesh's classroom. Today we are going to be digging into elements of culture, and as always, please make sure that you take notes as you go. If you need to pause it or rewind, whatever, to get the information you need, feel free to do that. So let's talk about the elements of culture. Culture is the shared behaviors of a group, so how a group is supposed to act. It determines how we view the world around us, and culture is passed down from one generation to the next. It can change as it's being passed down, but those beliefs, those ideas continue to be passed forward. Now, there are 6 elements of culture, and each element of culture explains a small part of that and how it looks in the bigger picture. So those 6 elements are social organization, traditions and values, language, religion, art and literature, and forms of government. And these things all connect with each other a little bit. Social organizations. This looks like a pyramid. It's a structure that groups people to create order, determines jobs, and a chain of command. Even in a family, there is a social structure of there is somebody in charge, whether it be a grandparent, a parent, whatever, and then goes down from there. And children learn how to act based on watching those above them in the social structure. That's also true of political structures where this could be grouped based on birth. So your parent's status is your status. So if you are born into royalty, then you stay royalty. But it could also be in a democratic republic where that structure is set up either by elections, by jobs and earning money, all sorts of different things. You've got lower class versus upper class, various different structures that we create for society. Traditions and values. These are learned behaviors taught to you by your family. So we talked about how the family creates structure, and those traditions and values, those are things that are passed down through that structure. And a tradition could be a celebration or custom that has meaning to your family. So we have traditions maybe as a society. So, for example, in the United States, we have the Super Bowl. That is a tradition that is passed down over years and years and years. But based on the family, that tradition might be celebrated differently. So these traditions could be things like bedtime stories, trick-or-treating, movie nights, how we celebrate birthdays, all kinds of things. And then values. Values, it's the idea of right and wrong that is taught either by family or by a society, things that we just know, hey, we shouldn't do this, or yeah, that's okay, no big deal. And that helps inform some of our social structure as well as our government in terms of what laws we eventually pass. Language. Language, it's how people communicate. We know that. People communicate through writing, speaking, through their body language. And in some cultures, they may speak the same language, but sayings and words can mean different things. In the United Kingdom, so England, a biscuit for them is a cookie, whereas for us, a biscuit is more of a soft, doughy thing, more bread-like, and a cookie is more sweet. Phrases and body language, those are determined by your culture as well. So in India, there might be, if you see 2 people walking down the street holding hands, it's not necessarily a romantic thing. Actually, it means that they are engaged in conversation and they do not want to be interrupted. It's a way of creating that connection. Religion. Religion impacts your culture by creating some of those traditions. So what ceremonies and holidays you practice? How do you celebrate Christmas? Do you celebrate Christmas? What you view as right and wrong, the food you eat or can't eat, clothing you wear. And religions, they affect the family structure, they can affect the governmental structure, and that culture can go all across the board. And so because of that, and the impact of religion, it can also mean that if two religions coming from places of power interact with each other, it can create conflict because they may be very different in what they believe, and they hold to those beliefs very, very strongly. And so that can create conflict. Art and literature. Art, we've got things like paintings, pottery, sculptures, music. Literature is books, plays, poems, holy books, laws, this sort of stuff. This is how culture is recorded and passed down. It's how we see what our society was like hundreds or even thousands of years ago, and ways that we have stayed the same and ways that we have changed. And culture, art and literature is the explanation of the history of our culture. And cultures have different art and literature that hold meaning to them. There are paintings that are very important to a Western American society that from an Eastern Asian society maybe might not be. Government. Government takes all of these different pieces of culture and ultimately forms it into a style of government. And so that government, it can also impact culture. It's not just a matter of culture impacting government. Government can impact culture. So it can create laws, and that can be based on things like in the United States, where we have a society that highly values personal freedom, and that connects way back to our history, and versus some societies that have developed a structure of high control, where there is that political leadership at the top that they control everything and no one else really gets a say in that. Governments, they can provide safety, they can give us protection, but they can also go on the offensive and start wars. But governments are ultimately supposed to improve the quality of life and help interpret our culture in a way that we want, but that is something that can cause tension as well, because there is not one single culture that is true for one country, especially as we expand out more and more into the world, people coming to the United States, people going from the United States elsewhere, that they bring that culture with them. So there's just a very quick look at culture for you, which once again has 6 elements: social organization, traditions and values, language, religion, art and literature, and forms of government. Thanks for joining me.